Oh, no sound. I think I should have sound now. Good afternoon, folks. Although it's not a great afternoon. We have Trump's pardon list and we have Biden being inaugurated. I think I kind of want to talk about both in order, and how we're just looking at like what's ultimately a pretty disappointing day. I tweeted out something along the lines of what's the worst ending, Trump's pardon list or the Game of Thrones on HBO ending, which was pretty abysmal as well. But let's just kind of go through it really quick. So no pardons for Snowden and Assange, despite massive support among Trump supporters for that, or Ross Ulbricht or John Kiriakou or anybody else involved in whistleblowing. Despite the fact that the very people who were most adamantly against these pardons are the people who thwarted the president's agenda for 4 years, that these people are responsible for revealing the fact that James Clapper perjured himself, lied to the entire country when he said that the NSA was not collecting information on millions of Americans. And then when you compare that to the pardons that were issued, I mean, it's just nothing if not disappointing. There's a pardon that I think one of the worst ones is probably for Solomon Melgen. Solomon Melgen is a Medicare fraudster, and his crimes were really pretty appalling. He not just defrauded the government by false Medicare billing, but he was giving patients unnecessary surgeries on their eyes to try to supposedly improve their vision that didn't work. And he was doing it to bill Medicare and make money off of Medicare. He was convicted of something like 67 counts of Medicare fraud and got a 17-year sentence. And the reason he apparently got a pardon is because he's Bob Menendez's buddy, and Menendez was indicted over all this stuff as well. This guy's not a Republican. He's been a Democrat donor his whole life. There's nothing about this pardon that furthers the conservative movement or the ends of justice or anything. It just is. It's a pardon for a Democrat fundraiser. I mean, this is the Palm Beach Post. This is a guy who billed $177 million and didn't even have it. This was, earned through fraud. And then he just spent it all. He's one of these freewheeling spenders of money that acquired via fraud. Another horrible pardon is the Kodak Black pardon. I mean, this guy I think he's been accused of rape, but more importantly, this is a guy who absolutely despises Trump supporters generally. He literally, Breitbart has it right. Trump pardons rapper Kodak Black, whose music video depicts Trump supporter being choked. There's no justification for this. I mean, the guy's out there furthering hatred against Trump supporters, and instead of looking out for what his base wants and the people his base wants pardons, instead he's pardoning a guy who despises his base. And the final one, I talked about this a couple days ago. I mean, the Charles Kushner pardon, I realize it's Jared's father, but it's still an appalling thing. I mean, what Charles Kushner did is he, quote, hired a prostitute to lure his brother-in-law and then arranged to have the encounter filmed and sent the recording to his own sister. I mean, it's just a disgusting crime, and there's no justification for a pardon. And that, combined with the fact that we didn't see Snowden or Assange pardons, that we didn't see pardons that were obviously in the interest of justice or in any way a wielding of power, is just, it's weak and disappointing. We heard tons of reports yesterday that it was Mitch McConnell and others pushing the idea that the president, or Mitch McConnell was essentially demanding that the president not pardon Snowden and Assange, or they'd impeach him. I mean, the fact that the president gave into those threats is just embarrassing. Just absolutely embarrassing. And so it's a very, very bad, low note to go out on. I think, ultimately we can look at the presidency as a success in a number of ways. I think it's one of the best foreign policy presidencies of our generation. No new wars, peace in the Middle East. There's a lot of things that the president and his team accomplished. I think that Operation Warp Speed is going to be looked back on as a truly great accomplishment as well, in terms of putting the infrastructure in place to support the fastest rollout of an antiviral vaccine in human history, and that it looks like that vaccine is extremely effective. So there's positives. I'm not saying there weren't it's not all down, but this is, the last 2 months are about as bad as it could have gone. And 2 months ago, I got a lot of flack for saying this. 1 second. I got a lot of flack for saying that Joe Biden won, not that he won fair and square, because there were a lot of shenanigans, but that he's effectively won the election, and that we as a movement needed to be figuring out what Trump should be doing with his power the next 2 months, rather than fighting a Deus Ex Machina. That looks pretty true right now, not just because we lost all the legal challenges and had the terrible Capitol riot and generally things went poorly, but also because we were not focused on forcing Trump to make sure he pardoned the right people. Like we could have as a movement, collectively exerted a lot more pressure to get the right people pardoned and to prevent like these horrible pardons. Another one we didn't even talk about, Kwame Kilpatrick, the horribly corrupt mayor of Detroit, another Democrat, just because Diamond and Silk wanted it. It was really, really disturbing. But like there's sort of this problem we had where we had a lot of people who really believed like there were just people lying to everybody. I mean, Cernovich, points out Greg Locke. I mean, these are horrible tweets. You have, to be clear, I've changed my mind about nothing. He says this 3 days ago. Biden will be exposed. Trump will be president. That's 2 days ago. Why are you lying to your followers? And now he says, I stand by what I said. I do not apologize for having deep convictions and strong values. That's not what this is. This is a prediction. You made a prediction, dude. You predicted that Trump would lose. Like, that's not good. Did you think that? Then if you thought that and you were telling that to your followers, you were just deluded. But otherwise you were lying to them, which is just really depressing. Lynwood, he's gone now, but he was, saying Joe Biden will never be president. Not like Joe Biden shouldn't be president. Not Joe Biden lost the election, but no, Joe Biden will not be president. These were predictions that were horrible. Sucked everybody's time and energy to something that was ultimately very low probability from the beginning and wasn't going to work. I'd said that I was like open to this in like early November when we were still figuring out what kind of legal challenges we have. But once they started coming out, like as a lawyer, I knew that these legal challenges were doomed. I said as much publicly, and I stopped, amplifying people who were saying this was all going to go over well. I think that, it's really, I'm glad Lynwood wasn't right about people being, he was later on ended up trying to accuse Mike Pence of treason for no reason. It's just incredibly silly. And I think, you're seeing a lot of people, like, I hate to promote Will Sommer, but he's got some of these group chats and they're useful. People saying, I want to puke. He sold us out. Trump lied. Like, we were lied to by Q. I mean, this is the problem with our movement, going forward. I think like, just stick with what's true. Stick with what you can prove. Stick with making predictions that are reasonable and not just selling people what they want to hear in the moment. I think if there's anything to learn, it's that we should really be a lot more careful. Anyway, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about there. I mean, I think Biden's president. His inauguration was unbelievably boring. It's about to be a year. We're gonna have a lot of fighting to do, but otherwise things are distressing. Anyway, I'm gonna read through some comments now. So if you want to ask a question or something, Trizzy P says it right. Lynwood was potentially the most successful political opposition psyop in history. He was left just long enough to help the Democrats win the Georgia Senate races. Remember all those stupid debates about, oh gosh, we need to, like, God forbid maybe you should or shouldn't vote in the Senate races. I mean, like, we won 0 legal challenges. We were so far behind the 8 ball on the project of like getting Trump reelected, despite having all the election results come down the wrong way. And we forgot, like, hey, maybe it would be nice to not lose the Senate and not allow, have some influence over who staffs Biden's administration. Chad Engelby asked an interesting question. Who would rate now as the best GOP candidate for 24? I think Pence is a very strong candidate. As Biden proves, you can't bet against any sitting VP. Their name recognition is huge. I think Pence handled himself well in the course of the last 2 months. He didn't. I mean, people wanted him to unilaterally reverse the results of the election. That never made sense, because if that were true, Joe Biden could have made Hillary Clinton president 4 years ago. I mean, clearly that's a ministerial role. But yet everybody, tried to bully Pence into unilaterally deciding to overturn certified electoral votes. That's not going to be a thing. So that's there. Leah Michelle says, why would anyone want Kilpatrick pardoned? I agree. I don't understand it. The guy's was a really corrupt mayor, stealing from the citizens of a very poor town. And it's very, very distressing. Trying to get news. Will they go after Trump supporters? I hope not, but that's certainly a possibility at this point. You've got to think that they're a little freaked out. They were super freaked out about rebellion and sedition for the inauguration. I think the complete quiet, maybe the fact that it was totally quiet will help things. Why didn't he commute Ulbricht? Because people didn't want him to, and he didn't realize that. I don't know what the deal is there. It looks like Ulbricht is a case where I'm not super familiar enough to be confident that, you know, one decision or another was right. It looks like his sentence was excessive. It looks like he committed federal crimes. It looks like his sentence was excessive and should have been commuted. So I'm disappointed. If that's the case, I'm disappointed there. But you know, Snowden and Assange absolutely should have been commuted or pardoned rather. Carpe Noctem saying martial law is still coming. Of course it is. Martial law coming, I guess, guys. We're all about to face, you know, martial law. I miss Carpe Noctem, another person I miss from Twitter. Twitter is the one who really intervened in this election. Think about what would have happened if Carpe's memes were more readily accessible in the run up to the election. They got him on a specious copyright violation, which wasn't a copyright violation. They still haven't restored his account. This is why we need new laws to change the laws to get people like Carpe back on the platform. Any other questions that are interesting? Let's see, or comments that I'm liking. Like, let's see. This is Laurel says Pence let us down a major way. I don't agree with you. Like the legal authority for saying this never made any sense to me. And so people who are blaming Pence for not, you know, blame Trump for not winning the election outright. Blame any number of blame the individual states for not running their elections properly. But it's not on Pence to fix it all against themselves. Somebody asked, what do you have against bookshelves? These are bookshelves. You just don't realize it. I'll show you. Hold on. This is right here. That's a bookshelf. See? It looks like it's not a bookshelf, but it is a bookshelf. It's really cool. I'm a fan of it. You should. I don't know if these are still available, but you can find some of these. So that's a good question. Chad says we need a social media bill of rights. I think that's exactly right. I was going to have Cerno on, but we may still do that later. I wanted to have a sit down talk with Cernovich just about, you know, because Cernovich and I both had the, you know, experience of looking at the crowd and the crowd demanding that everybody get on board with these challenges and just being like, they're not going to work. Like we both have legal training. We're both lawyers. We both read the briefs and we're like, these challenges are not going to work. Biden's going to be president. And we all need to that's just going to happen now. I mean, you know, you say what you want about who we wanted to win, but Biden's going to be president. We need to deal with that. And I'm hoping that is the case. So Cerno's a good friend. Hopefully we'll do that later. As Carpe says, Pence, the time to win the election if I voter fraud was before election day. That's right. After the election happens, you're on such a fast clock. I mean, think about how fast those votes are certified. You've got 30 days. 30 days to put all your evidence together and make a persuasive case to a federal judge to do something that's never been done in American history, reverse the results of the election, of a presidential election. It's just not, such a big ask and you just don't have the time. The big problem, as I've said routinely, is we let them run wild for a year, getting rid of so many different voter integrity constraints. And we just needed to fight that a lot harder. Somebody says, maybe you and Cernovich should go on Jack Murphy Live together. Jack's a friend. I've gone on his show before. Maybe we can do that together. Maybe we'll get Jack Murphy on here later. So let's see. Look for a few more comments here. Somebody says, local politics is everything, build from the bottom up. I'm going to try and get involved in local Republican Party politics here in Maryland. We'll see how relevant that is, but at least I'll try. And I appreciate Aaron is Aaron. I'm Will, you are the man. I appreciate that. If you are a fan of this and you're still here, folks, go to facebook.com/human events media and like us, or go to youtube.com/human events and subscribe. One of those two things, again, because Periscope is shutting down in 2 months. So I do want to see and make sure that people are seeing our stuff on multiple different platforms. So let's see here. General Flynn saying 10 of 10 Trump would win. Yeah, I didn't like that either. All the people who were just predicting, Sidney Powell did great legal work for Flynn and was a very aggressive lawyer in that case. But I mean, I thought the Kraken lawsuits were horribly irresponsible. I read them; they made no sense. There was a good bit by Axios. I think Axios Trump bar. Let's see if I can find this. If you haven't read this. This is worth going and reading the Jonathan Swan piece at Axios. It's just a really good example of like Barr was trying to saying a lot of the stuff that me and Cerno were saying. Just it's not a normative argument. It's just like, look, your stuff isn't going to work. Like your theory, we don't have the evidence we need to overturn this election. Sorry, you think you do, but you don't. And one of the things he said, I cannot figure out what Sidney Powell's theory was. I couldn't figure it out either. Never made any sense to me. This is a good comment here. It's their fault for allowing mail-in ballots and electronic machines. No more of that for any reason. Absentee for active duty military only. That's the voting reform I want to see. I don't see why we need mail-in ballots. Because my view is an election, the election integrity should be like Caesar's wife, beyond question. It should just be obvious that the election has integrity. It should be obvious that fraud and crime are not possible. And I think that the big problem here is that wasn't the case. Somebody says, I still can't believe the media got away with calling January 6th insurrection. A few hundred people with no weapons, really. It's just, I don't know. It's they want to do it, so they're doing it. I never thought it was reasonable. A couple more questions. Let's see. We're looking at for a few more comments. I think, but ultimately, like, it's a really bad look for the president. He could have gone out much better. Early on, I was talking about how this reminded me of the Battle of Midway, where the Japanese lost 3 of their carriers and needed to realize that they had lost the battle and needed to preserve the military power they had left. They had a 4th carrier, but that carrier was going to be overwhelmed if they kept fighting. And instead of getting that carrier out of harm's way and making sure they didn't lose all of their carrier strength in that battle, they just went ahead and charged straight ahead and ultimately lost that carrier too, right? Like, Trump would still have his Twitter account and a lot more goodwill and a lot more force behind him if he had been a little more quick to, he didn't even need to go right away and accept reality. But if he'd accepted that he was, once the legal challenges wrapped up, that, it was going to be Joe Biden, and instead of encouraging the sort of march on the Capitol during the Electoral College, like, he would have been fine. He would have, and then if he had pardoned Snowden and Assange, he'd have a huge amount of popularity. The big problem with not pardoning Snowden and Assange is a huge core of Trump's support was the anti-neocon right. That's like a huge part of Trump's support, and that just didn't show up. And that's the part that he pissed off the most by not pardoning Trump and Assange. Where am I after Periscope is abolished again? I will still be on Twitter at Will Chamberlain, but also we do youtube.com/human events and facebook.com/human events media. Okay. Yeah. Somebody says, I don't like Trump anymore because of the pardons. I think the pardons are gross and indefensible. And I think they really leave a sour taste in my mouth about the presidency. I think overall the presidency was good because of how dramatically better it was on foreign policy than previous presidencies. But those pardons are gross. There's just no getting around it. Pardoning a Medicare fraudster who just stole a ton of money from his victims, pardoning a rapper who had a video depicting a Trump supporter being choked, pardoning Charles Kushner, who blackmailed his brother-in-law and solicited a prostitute to do so, pardoning Kwame Kilpatrick, a super corrupt Democrat mayor. These are terrible pardons. There's no getting around it. It's a terrible list, and it's really embarrassing. Somebody says, amazing Will, Cerna, and Posobiec never get booted for Twitter. You'll notice it's because we don't lie. we don't lie. We just tell it straight up, and we don't get irrational. So we're all still here. Anyway, that's what I got for the moment. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And again, hit the like and subscribe buttons if you are there. And we're going to be here, and we're going to keep going, keep doing this, and there'll be more to talk about tomorrow. So later, folks. Peace.